Good morning, this is Mickey Cope and I'm your hostess for Wandering Roads. You know me, I'm in and out of every place. I hope I got a good thing for you today. If you've been following the Jetty project over in Saco, in the Chronicle and in the Tribune and everybody else out there, I'm going to try and help you realize what's going on. We're going to put this map up on the TV screen so you can see what we're talking about. I have the chairman, Rick Millard from the Saco, what are we calling this?
Saco Shoreline Commission.
Shoreline Commission. And he lives in Camp Ellis. And I've been to their home. That ocean's pretty close. When I saw your place, I thought, oh my God, this isn't good. But anyway, you don't think that way. Neither does Ann, your wife, who's a friend of mine. So let's get on with this show, and we'll show you what we're going to do. Would you bring up the map of Camp Ellis for me, please? We're going to follow this. I don't know if any of you got your papers. This was in the Sunday, August 11th, Maine Sunday Telegram. And there's a whole bunch of things in there, even old pictures from what the Jetty looked like before. I mean, the city looked like before. Anyway, let's welcome Rick. Hi, Rick. So nice to meet you.
I'm glad to be here.
Good. Let's see what we can do about this. They said, I looked at this dredge thing, but now I want to go backwards and say, how did this start? 1939, was it? No.
Actually, the jetty was authorized by Abraham Lincoln when he was in office.
Back.
Yep. And the actual construction started in the 1880s. It's been modified 3 or 4 times since it was originally built. The last time they modified it was in the late 60s, where they smoothed the outside of the jetty, the inner shore portion. And that's led to a number of the problems that we have now.
Well, I know when I had Pete Slavinsky on with Slog and the water rise, he was saying that the jetty was taking the sand out, and it was pushing it down to, what's that island as you come up there?
Down towards Eagle?
Yeah, down that way.
Yes.
It's pushing it north, is it? Is that north?
Yes, it's moving the sand north. That's where the erosion is happening. It's a natural occurrence on bays on the east coast that it has a clockwise current in it. However, the jetty that we have really exacerbates the situation. With the combination of the way the waves hit the jetty, they actually cause a scrubbing motion on the beach. And if you go down and look at the beach, you can actually see how the waves come in at an angle and actually swipe on the beach. And that actually aggravates the erosion in that area. The area down near the base of the jetty has eroded almost completely. There's almost no sand there to erode any further. The stone is the only thing that prevents and keeps the land that's there in place. In a little bit more northern area, north of where the rocks are along the shoreline, that's where we've experienced a lot of the erosion lately, to the point of, I think in the last 3 years, they've lost like 25 feet of beach. That would be up near the Unitarian Church in that area there, the Universalist Church. They have a camp in that area where they have the ecology school and so on. There's been severe erosion in that area of about that range in the last few years. But it's primarily, the erosion is working northward along the bay. If allowed to continue on its own, it would work its way all around the bay. It would all the way around to Pine Point. But right now, it's at the lower end.
I know that one house right there is pretty well covered with sand.
There's right on the end of not Island View. I can't remember the name of the street. But there are a number of houses right in that area that are threatened. Some fairly pricey. They were, a few years ago, they were $1 million homes.
Oh my God, that's not good.
No, I mean it's a very difficult problem as well. I've been working with the Corps of Engineers for about, on and off, 17 years. I started in '97. My father-in-law worked on it for 20 years prior to that. And the problem goes back into the 50s, and people have been working on it that long. It's taken that long for us to get to a point where we could get to some sort of a solution.
Okay, let's go now to the solution. On this, explain to them what this yellow mark was.
Okay,
That-
there is a section just north of the jetty. It corresponds to about 2,500 linear feet. But that is, and it's highlighted in orange on the map.
Yeah.
That is the area that the Corps of Engineers, Army Corps of Engineers, has focused their attention and done all their analysis on. That's the area of primary erosion, and if you wanted to relate it physically to what's on the beach, that's basically where all the stone is on the shoreline.
Okay.
So they are looking to mitigate the erosion in that area by just cutting down on the amount of energy that and wave energy and in that area is from storms and just from normal rise and fall of the tides.
Okay, so they're going to put in that spur, you said.
Yep, they want to put in a 750-foot spur, someplace around the 2,000-foot mark.
Right.
That would run parallel to the shore. It'll be the same height as the existing jetty, plus they're going to do some fortifications to hold it in place just because of the energy involved.
Okay. Now, once they get that built, what happens if we get a bad nor'easter? Is that going to deflect it or some of the wave action? Or is everything on the shore going to be okay? Or is something going to happen there?
What they've done is they've tried to limit the wave action and the wave reflections off the jetty in the area that's highlighted. So in that area, they're going to remove some of the wave energy because it will be absorbed by breaking on that spur.
On that spur.
And it'll cut off the current that runs right along the beach in that area so that there'll be less erosion and sand movement up the beach. Now, in addition to building the spur, over that first portion, they're going to put around 400,000 cubic yards of sand on the beach. So that would rebuild the beach just as a measure, get a feeling for it. It'll add about 50 to 75 feet to the beach at high tide.
At high tide.
At high tide.
Okay.
So there'll be a beach at high tide. They expect some erosion with that, so there'll be some replenishment that'll have to take place over time. When they do they'll build the stone. They'll do the stone work first. That'll take a little more than a year. And they'll do the sand work after that. It doesn't make sense to do it the other way around.
Okay.
And they'll taper that sand work they do. They'll taper it into the existing profile of the beach.
Okay.
So it'll be all smooth. The stone work can be done. Usually it's done in the better time of year, so it'll be done spring, summer, fall. The sand work can only be done over the winter. So the thought is that they would be doing it in December through the end of February or March.
Why can that only be done at winter?
There are problems. It's associated with the dredge as well. So there are problems with migrating species of striped bass, for example, and the impact on the overall ecology. It has to do with the Department of Environmental Protection and their regulations.
Okay. So everybody's involved in this, including what you just said, Department of Environmental.
Oh yeah, from the very beginning. We're involved locally with the Saco Shoreline Commission. We're involved at the state level with Maine Geological. And as a matter of fact, the chairman of the board is from the Maine Geological, Bob Marvini. And we've got the Corps of Engineers, who has all of the federal regulations that they're administering. So we've had that involvement from the very beginning as far as all of these projects and the proposed solutions that we've done up to this time.
Have the people had their voice too?
The Corps of Engineers has had a number of public meetings. They've presented their findings and they've presented their proposed way forwards in public meetings. And a number have been open for comment and question. We just finished, as a matter of fact, a public comment session period for the existing plan.
Okay. You had said earlier, I heard you over talking with Steve, that this is plan number, how many plans did you go through?
Oh, we looked at like 30 different alternatives as far as what we could do with the jetty. Every place from removal to building segmented spurs and so on. This was the alternative that gave the most bang for the buck based upon the Corps. This was the Corps' preferred solution.
And you said they did all this testing of the wave action?
They went through, yes, they started off by doing measurements in the river and in the bay, looking at the wave action and the tidal variations, and measuring all of the amount of wave energy and reflected energy that is in the highlighted area that we talked about earlier. Then they built a computer model of the bay, including all of the elements that influence the wave action, and used state-of-the-art computer modeling, finite element analysis to trace how the sand would move in the bay.
Okay. So in other words, we've got a lot of science behind this project.
Oh yeah, as I said, it's state-of-the-art solution. The analysis they did wasn't possible 10 years ago.
Okay.
Even with the computers that we have today, when they run the model, they put their input in today, they don't get the results until tomorrow.
Oh.
It takes overnight to perform all the calculations and get to a solution.
Wow. Okay. So this is not a fly-by-night thing.
No, as I said, I've been working with the same group of people for 17 years on this.
Yeah, I'd heard everybody was saying that. I had somebody approach me the other day when asked me when I was going to do another show, and I told them this show was coming on, and they said, oh yeah, they want us Biddeford people to pay for some of that. And I said to myself, well, why shouldn't Biddeford pay for some of this? When they built that jetty, it was and the South Jetty, it was to open up the Saco River. Isn't that the Saco River?
Yes.
Okay, it was to open up the Saco River for the mills. Well, the mills is on both sides of that river, so why wouldn't Biddeford be a part of that?
They certainly get sand every time there's a dredge. I mean, there's sand that comes out. When they dredge the river, there's sand that goes on the Hills Beach areas that are eroding. And certainly Biddeford was a large concern of ours as far as going forward and examining all of these alternatives. There were a number of alternatives that were out and out rejected because it wouldn't be good for Biddeford and for the beaches. The removals that we looked at removing the North Jetty, the long jetty. One of the things that came out of that very, very quickly was it would expose that whole Hills Beach area to significant erosion, simply because the South Jetty is not built to provide that level of protection to those beaches. So those alternatives were rejected primarily for that reason.
Okay.
The problem that we're looking at is not just a Saco problem. It affects the entire bay.
Oh yeah.
It affects the people in Pine Point, it affects the people in Old Orchard, it affects the people in Ocean Park, and it affects the people in Biddeford.
Yeah. I realize that.
I mean,
Okay. How much of this is this going to affect any of the sand or the gravel that's coming out of the Saco River forming a delta? Is anything going to affect that, or is that still going to remain the same?
they're not going to change that. The only thing as far as the dredges are going to occur as they have been, the structures that are there will remain as they are.
Okay.
So as far as the river is concerned, the only thing that would be impacted is the dredging.
Okay. But
Proposed,
don't they do that pretty regularly on a time
they're
basis?
late. They're late in doing it now. They usually dredge the river, I think the schedule is like every 10 or 12 years. We're at 15 years at this point, and they're trying to time the dredge with the building of the spur, and that's certainly causing some problems now because there's significant sand buildup at this point.
Well, when I lived down in Miami, I remember seeing the beaches being the ocean being dredged and putting sand back on the beaches so that everybody from the north could come down to the south and have that great big beautiful beach. And
Yeah.
I remember them when I lived in New Orleans, dredging the delta. It seems like that was a continuous problem.
We looked at taking sand that was offshore
Yeah,
and
bringing
bringing
it
it up
back.
on it, but it doesn't work in Camp Ellis.
It won't, because of the
Doesn't work.
dynamics of the.
Just because it's been this way so long that the whole bottom, the bathymetry, it has changed.
Okay.
So it's not the same as it used to be. And it's been that way for a long time. So
And we can't go back.
I don't believe it's a good alternative.
Okay, okay.
So also dredging all that sand is more expensive than the proposed alternative.
Okay, so there was one thing in here that I read too about the Saco and Biddeford are considering whether to jointly purchase a dredge, which is an estimated cost of $600,000. But if you both go in on this and you both pay for that, that would be like $300,000 for each city, right?
Yes.
That's half and half. Then you guys could do the dredging when you needed it for the Saco Bay area and maybe even down south if they needed it in some of the other beaches.
Well, that would
You could
involve
also rent it
city-to-city
out. Why not?
arrangements,
Why
yeah.
couldn't you guys rent it out?
But it would involve city-to-city arrangements, and that certainly may be possible. I don't know anything about that. However, doing dredges or having your own dredge and being able to go through and maintain the river would be an advantage to the area. Certainly, it would be an attractive element for all sailboaters, for example, which have a very difficult time exiting the river at this point, simply because the draft is at points of the tide is not enough.
Okay. I hope people realize that.
It allows you to do, it avoids the current situation we have, which is waiting for the Corps to get around to doing our dredge.
Okay.
There's some significant scheduling issues that we could resolve. As you point out, we could do it on our own schedule. There is nothing that would be technically challenging as far as this is concerned. The administration knows how to do the permitting that would be involved. They could certainly have people trained to operate the equipment and so on. So, in my opinion, it's a good idea.
Yeah, well, I was thinking that too when I was reading this article. This just blows my mind. I mean, you know, I know what's going on in the rest of the states, but this really has been a problem for a long time. And when I've been out there, because I went out and did a thing with Ferry Beach, the ecology school, I've seen what they've been doing to their beach, trying to restore it with the grasses. And there's another place on the beach coming south towards the Jetty, the silver, the big pipes. What I want to say pipes, and I don't think that's the right word.
Oh yes, the bags.
Yeah, those things.
Yeah, those are state of the art too.
Are they working?
The problem
Somewhat?
they have is they don't have enough of a buffer, so where they have to put them, they have a hard time keeping them covered.
Okay.
And they're most effective when they're covered. The city of Saco they've been tremendous as far as their assistance in this area. They work very hard in maintaining that. My hat is off to them for that. They're very good dealing with all of those situations that usually arise from storms and such.
I was surprised that in here that it said Saco gets 30% of their tax base from that area. Is that due to Hewitt's and the other little businesses along the way?
No.
Or is it just from the housing?
Shorefront property is the highest value property in the city of Saco. It's taxed higher than Main Street.
Whoa, I did not know that. How come?
It's the way the assessments were done. I mean, that's
Because
a
it's a
city
luxury to
issue.
live on the beach?
The city is the one that went through and it changed that a few years ago when they did their assessments.
Huh. So you pay more than the people in town?
Yes. Is a mill rate, yes.
Interesting.
The people on the water, I think, actually, I think they pay by the foot, but I'm not positive of that.
Wow. Huh. Okay. So when are they going, when is this project going to start? I heard
That's
3
a very
years.
good question. It has a indeterminate answer at the moment. The current situation is we're waiting for the Corps of Engineers to provide a partnership agreement that the city of Saco needs to review, negotiate, and sign.
Oh, that's that replenishment thing?
It decides how the maintenance will be done over time. In theory, and the way things were set up as far as all of the analysis and the plan is concerned, the beach should, in 20 or 30 years, stabilize, and we shouldn't need to add any more sand. But over that period, there'll be some period where there'll be an adjustment, and there will be continued erosion. So over that time, the beach will have to be built up again. At some point, there'll be a trigger that says, okay, it's eroded enough, we need to go put sand back on the beach. Some of it is going to come out of the river every time they do a dredge, which should be more of a convenience if we owned our own dredge, because we could do it on our own schedule.
Right.
Otherwise, we'd be dependent upon the Corps to come in and do that.
Will the Corps help pay for part of that dredge?
I don't know the answer.
Okay.
We have $26.9 million that's been allocated. We're going to get into the allocation and
Okay.
authorization problem. But it's been allocated by Congress for this project. So money is available to work on this project. Whether the dredge can be included in that is a different question, and I don't know. It depends how depends on the federal regulations and how the Corps is allowed to spend their money.
Okay.
Would it fit within the budget? I believe it would.
Well, it seems like if they would pay a third and a third and a third, it would be reasonable for both cities.
I don't know about.
I'm just thinking money-wise.
Yeah, I understand, but I don't know. There are a lot of dynamics and ramifications that come out of that, and there are a lot of regulations, the federal defense and federal acquisition regulations and so on that govern what can be done and how it needs to be done, and it can be pretty tricky.
Okay.
So I don't know what they can do and what they can't, bottom line. But it certainly would be more convenient if we could go through, dredge the river, take whatever sand we could from the river and put it on the beach. And then if we need additional, we could then purchase and put sand on the beach. And they've already looked into sources. There are sources of sand that are not far away that are compatible. And they've gone through and they've measured the color and the grain size and everything. It's all compatible with the beach.
There's a lot to it. I hope you folks realize that Biddeford and Saco aren't the only coastlines that are in trouble, because it goes all the way down to Florida. And I think it goes up a little higher, doesn't it? No, that would be all rocks up farther.
There are 80 miles of beach in the state of Maine, out of the 1,700 miles of
Right, and there's
coastline.
more going south.
Yep. So I think
A lot more,
it goes
yeah.
up to like Popham, and then it jumps up to
Yeah.
what they call Sand Beach up in Mount Desert.
Yep. What else do I need to know?
Well, we have the partnership agreement that has to take place.
Okay.
We have the finalization of the plan. They've gone through and done all the preliminary design. They have to go through and make sure the numbers are right and make sure that they have the right size stone. They've got to go through and make sure they know what the stone's going to cost, what the sand is going to cost. So they have all of those finalization things that they need to do. There's real estate that will need to be acquired. They have to have beach access, and whatever they put sand on. They cannot improve public property. Excuse me, they cannot improve private property. They have to have, it has to be public property that they improve. So.
Well, that's going to be interesting.
It is
What was-
probably.
wait, let me back up just a second. I read something about where Hewitt's is situated. Something about the oceans now coming up to their property. What if it's their property, but the beach is eroded that much towards them?
I'm not sure
what
about
I'm-
that, but if you go down there, no, I'm not. Let me rephrase that. Don't go down there. But in the storms, if we have any significant storm, the seawater will run right down Bay Ave, which is where you're talking about.
Okay.
That's right at the base of the jetty, runs right down the street and ends up at the parking lot. The water will run right down through there.
Isn't that a
foot and half
recent
deep.
phenomena?
It's been that way for quite a while.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, Wormwoods regularly puts sandbags at their door to keep the water out because it'll rise that high.
Okay. Okay. I'm
So
just
the
getting
water
that
does
in
run
my-
down through. It's one of the reasons they put storm drains in that area, is to take care of all of that runoff.
Okay. Didn't mean
It's-
to get you back
that's
off the
okay.
track, but that popped into my head what was going on over there, if it was even within the realm of being private property, or if that's just city property.
The
Does
Corps can only improve public
public property.
property.
So how much of the beach is public?
It varies because of the laws. As you know, Maine was once part of Massachusetts, so we have a lot of our laws are based upon Massachusetts law originally because they just changed
Right.
it. They just kept the same laws and applied them here. So there are some properties that actually own to the edge of the water, so they can actually have a private beach.
Oh.
So that land where they're going to do improvements, they need to have access. So, and it needs to be publicly available once the improvements are
So
added.
what happens now?
Well, I mean, it's open. It'll be taken by eminent domain. That's the process that will be done. So depending upon how long it takes to go through the process, if it goes to court, it will take a long time. So,
Then there's more
however-
erosion and everything's.
well, I mean, everything just takes time. I mean,
How many houses have already gone in to the ocean?
38
38
have gone in so far.
So if there was a really bad nor'easter or a really bad storm that we had come through here, we could lose more.
Not could,
Will.
will.
And what would this do if we go through with all this that we've got planned? That beach is going to be out farther, which is going to say that. But what about the rising water?
Sea level
Sea
rise. That's anybody's guess. I mean, we're trying to anticipate some of that, but that's really not a driver as far as this is concerned. We're talking about the wave energy and the erosion problem caused by the wave energy at this point. The sea level rise is another issue that we'll all have to deal with. There's a lot of stuff coming down the road for that. I mean, they're looking at new flood zones and various other things.
Wow. I would think that would have been included.
The focus has been on the wave action and
Just
the
the
erosion.
wave